Alrighty, so I've been putting this video off for a little too long now. It's been kind of like PTSD triggering to think about this process and this project. But recently, in March, I decided to develop our new website for Sprintly entirely using Claude Code, custom hosted through Vercel using Next.js. So when I got into this originally, I was imagining it would be a lot more straightforward, and it was at first. But the more tweaks you want to make, the more in depth you want to get, it gets a lot more challenging. So I wanted to make a video and a guide based on my experience. I have never touched code in my life, and I've been a designer for a long time, and I've been designing websites and working on web development for a very long time. So I have expertise in the field. I understand certain things that laymen wouldn't understand. That definitely helped a tremendous amount. I don't think people understand that there are so many things that go unseen if you don't know what you're looking for, especially in a field this complex where things are always changing. So with that being said, I still don't think this replaces designers or developers or any of that stuff. I still think these people are incredibly valued. It is turning designers into developers. Like me, for example, I wouldn't say I turned into a developer, but I definitely went somewhere that I wouldn't have otherwise. Anyway, I actually made a guide here, and I consolidated my entire experience based off of the things that I've learned while doing this and making this project. I'll show you the website in a second, but I do want to say that I host this website through Vercel. It's built on Next.js, and I don't pay a cent outside of what I pay yearly for the domain. I literally don't pay anything. And the stack is it's a pretty big stack. So I'm using Next.js, like I said. The CMS is hosted through Prismic. Styling is going to be Tailwind. Animation, I'm using GSEP and Framer. For analytics, I'm using Google Analytics 4, Vercel, and Clarity. And then for search analytics, I'm using Google Search Console. For hosting, I'm using Vercel. For the code base, I'm using GitHub. For the UI library, I am using React. And then for emails and like forms for like the contact us, I'm using Resend. Tag Manager is Google Tags Manager, and then the security is HTTPS and HTTP too. So it's not like a super huge stack, but I mean, it's definitely there. And I don't pay a cent. So that's incredible. Anyway, let's take a look at Sprintly.com. So this website took me a solid week and a half to build. And I honestly really did like the way it came out. So we have a cookies banner. That's actually really cool because I always had issues with tracking data, because if you give users the ability to reject off rip, most people are going to do that. Call me a scammer or a dickhead, I don't care. But if you want to turn off cookies, then you can go to the cookie policy page and then open up the editor and turn them off. I'm not going to give you the ability to do that right out of the gate because I want that data. I'm sorry. So this is the homepage, the hero section, obviously. It's not too much. I wanted to make the brand space theme, so that's what we got going on here. As you can see, we have like a parallax effect with some stars that are kind of going in and out. We have a GSEP animation here. The GSEP animation is it's effective towards the scroll. I made all the illustrations with Claude Code. Sometimes I would have to go into Figma and make like a low fidelity mock-up of like what I expect. Like this one I had to, but I did the animations and styling and whatnot. And then pretty much everything from here on out, either the copy was made by Claude and I refined, or something along those lines. Same thing for illustrations. Illustrations were actually a lot better than I imagined they would be, so that was pretty cool. Got some bento layout going on here as well. So overall, I would say it's a standard website. I would say it's even higher quality than most, even through like Framer and Webflow, because of the way that I was able to build it. But we have CMS like right here, for example. We have a CTA. All these are components. These are built using tokens, so it's not just like random hard-coded things. Like there's a consistency using tokens and components like you would in a real environment. So that's actually what we're going to learn about today. So this guide is going to be able to download this. No emails or, like I'm not trying to make this guide so that I can like put you in a funnel. It's literally just, I wanted to let people know what I had to do. Honestly, I'm making this video to let people know that you cannot replace designers yet. It's not possible. It's possible. Not if you care. If you care about the output and the outcome, then you need to still hire people. And I actually had never hated a project in web development as much as I hated this project. There was something about just the workflow that is tedious. Um, so I'm making this video to let people know that you can't replace. It's still really effective though, and if you take the time and you apply this framework here to your project, then you will have a lot more success than the layman person that hasn't done that. So anyway, we went over the stack. I want to go over the process now. Originally, I was going to record this video and just make an entire website from scratch, but that would be a very long website or a very long video. So we're just going to go through the process here, and then maybe I'll make like a video of me using the same process. So the first thing you want to do, and by the way, you want to do this in order, like this from 1 to 8, you want to do this in order. It's very important that you don't skip around or do different things, because we want to get the beginning of your web project literally concrete. We want that foundation to be as sturdy as humanly possible. We don't want there to be any room for failure or issues. And this is how you do that. This is how you're going to get consistency throughout the entire process. This is how you're going to get all of the things that you need in one place at the start of it. You don't have to like bounce around. This is really important that you follow the process here. So step 1 is the setup. You want to install Claude Code and VS Code, which is kind of optional. You don't have to use VS Code. I just find it to be the best. You want to create a GitHub repo, and then you want to create a Vercel, and then you want to copy, or you want to sync your GitHub repo to the Vercel, and then you want to auto deploy that. So it's not going to deploy until you have something built, so you don't really have to do that right away, but that's the first thing, is setting up. It's just getting the stuff all just built out. You're not going to prompt Claude Code yet for anything like that. You're literally just getting everything built so that when you start to prompt, it actually goes somewhere quicker. The second thing is, you want to install Next.js, GSAP, Resend, Prismic, Tailwind, and any other things that are going to be in your stack. You want to know what your website's going to be built on before, for the most part. You can add stuff to the stack later on, but there are sometimes conflicts and things that happen that require like a large portion of time and tokens, by the way, to be allocated. So you want to have at least like 90% of your stack figured out before you even prompt Claude Code once. So you can use Claude Code to actually install these things to your code base. So you can do that manually. You can have Claude Code do it, but you just want to make sure that stuff's taken care of. And you make your accounts. You set up all the variables in that account, like your email and stuff like that. You don't have to like get super into it, but you just want to make sure that you have your accounts for like say Prismic and Resend, for example. The third thing is CLAUDE.md. So CLAUDE.md files are really, really important. If you've heard of skills, Claude skills, it's the same thing. They're MD files as well. It's basically a set of directions. It's not really that crazy of a concept. It's literally just instruction and rule sets for Claude Code that it reads through every single time. So the reason that you want a Claude.md file is because the Claude.md file is going to be the first thing that Claude Code looks at every single time you prompt. And it's going to have, and I'll read it here. It's going to have company context, so everything that your company does. It's going to have the file structure. It's going to have naming conventions, SEO rules, strict do's and don'ts, things like make sure you use, never hard code anything, always use tokens, or use components when they're available, or basically I like to use it for SEO stuff. I would make sure that I would define SEO. And then I would then be like, okay, well, I want the title to make sure it's between this and this many characters. I want the description to be this and have this many characters. The open graph image, which can be automatic if you set it up. I want the open graph image to look like this. And then I want the schemas to make sure that they're actually reflective of what's on the page. So there's a lot of stuff that you want to do in the Claude.md file that will make your life a lot easier long term. You don't have to go back and like do all these things back to back to back. So the Claude.md file is the first thing that it looks at, or at least references. So you want to make sure you write that out pretty well. The fourth thing is skills. So I use 2 skills. I tried a few other ones, but they weren't really doing it for me. So the 2 skills that I used for Sprintly specifically was the front-end design skill and then the GSAP skill. And you can find those online. You just Google them. There's like different iterations of them. This is one of them. This is GSAP skill, and here's the front end hosted through GitHub. And these are also MD files, so it's just more instructions. And by using these 2 things, you'll have a better, more efficient way of interacting with GSAP animations in terms of telling Claude what you want and trying to explain it. It will try to be a little bit more efficient with the code. So that is pretty useful if you want to have heavy animations. And then for the front end design skill, this is just informing Claude on like modern design philosophy and standards and practices. Again, it's not super huge or important, but this is really what can separate a really generic, AI generated website versus something that's a little bit more customized and unique. So that front end design skill can go a long way depending on what your website looks like. The fifth thing is the style guide. So you have to have branding established prior to your project. You want to have a logo or logos. You want to have a color palette. You want to have your typography and the actual fonts. If they're not hosted through like Google, for example, you have to have the actual file version of those, and you want to upload those to your code base through your public folder. And you basically want to have like a full branding guideline, or at least a lean branding page. It just tells everything about visually, and hopefully even like positioning, or anything that talks about your company or whatever you're building. The branding guidelines are going to be used to actually create the style guide. So for the style guide, it's going to be the first thing that you build with Claude. You're going to feed Claude all the branding assets in the style guide. You're going to make sure that the assets are uploaded in the public folder, and then you're going to have it build a style guide. And then when you tell Claude to build it, it's not going to be perfect right away. You're going to want to make sure that you go section by section and just make sure that you revise until it is perfect and exactly how you want it. So the sixth thing is tokens. So after your style guide is created and you're happy with it and it resembles and it looks like a good system, you want to create tokens. And this is basically going to be your styles.css. The reason that we create tokens is because tokens are going to be things that you use on a ongoing basis over and over and over again. So if you change one thing in one place, you could say, for example, let's say that you have a logo that's a certain purple color in your nav bar, and it's like that across the entire website. You could say, hey, change the token color that uses the logo on my nav bar to this color. And instead of it having to change every single logo individually, it just changes the actual token and styles.css. So it's a lot more quicker for Claude Code, and it's also easier to reference if you're going into the code base. Tokens are really just something that makes your life a lot easier, and also it's really important for consistency, because if you don't do this, there are chances where like Claude will just have different shades of purple for different things, and you won't even notice. So yeah, definitely want to make sure that you have tokens after your style guide is set up. After your style guide and your tokens are generated, you want to build a components page. So you'll have a style guide page, and now you'll have a components page. I'll actually show you what Sprintly's looks like now. So you can actually go check ours out if you want to see it. It's sprintly.com/styles. So this is our design system right here. We use Newhouse Grotesque. You can see the token names, the variable names right down here. Spacing, border radius. You even have our buttons in here, even as they're technically components. So yeah, this is our style guide, and these are all baked right into the styles.css. And we also have it like so that you can easily get place to place. This is good stuff for branding, especially if we're hiring externally. And then we also have the components linked in the nav up here as well, so we can go check out the components here. So we have the primitives, the layout, footer, and all these things are basically just sections that we use in instance over and over again. So that's what you're going to do then you're going to create the components page, and you're not going to have components right away. You just want to start with the primitive stuff. So that's going to be your buttons and anything else that's going to be repeated. So usually you'll start with buttons, and then you'll create your nav bar once you actually create your home page, and then you'll create your footer, and then you'll create your CTA page or section component. Then you'll create like a testimonials component. So this is something that evolves over time. Again, you want to put in Claude.md file, hey, whenever we make a new component, make sure you add that to the components page. I don't know how to do that. And that's components so that you're not rebuilding the same thing over and over again. And also if you want to change something, one component, it changes across the website. Something that's also really useful to use is like, for example, FAQs. If you have FAQs and they're not different per service or something like that, but you want to use the same layout, you can use variables of a component. So variable 1 will be for like this service FAQ, and variable 2 will be this service FAQ. So you, again, save time, keep the same layout, and it's really nice. And then the eighth thing is pages. So we've essentially built the foundation for Claude Code. We went out of our way to get the style guide built. We went out of our way to get everything connected. We have the code base and stack ready to go. We have tokens built in the style CSS. We have Next.js and Tailwind and anything else in our stack installed. We can now actually build. And so that's 8. You want to build your homepage. You want to start with, you want to have it build the entire homepage. You basically give Claude the prompt, and then you say, this is what I want on the homepage, and you will have it build you the whole homepage. You don't want to do it section by section. You actually want to do it page by page. And I learned that because if you do it by section, it gets painfully inconsistent. Whereas if you have it do the whole page, it's a lot more consistent with styling and things like that. So that's number 8. So you refine your page section by section. You don't want to try to refine an entire page at once. Once it generates that page, if you're like, okay, I like this style, then you can actually, begin to change how things look in terms of styling or typography or spacing, etc., placement, structure. But until you get there, until you get to that part where you're like 60 to 7% happy with how it looks, you just want to keep iterating. And the best way to do that is through visual references. So to create your homepage, I always recommend at least uploading at least one reference. So you want to show Claude Code when you're like prompting it, like, hey, I want my homepage to have this structure and this layout. Don't worry about content. Don't worry about styling. Don't worry about colors or product. It doesn't matter. Really, all we want is to establish the structure and the layout. Everything else is going to change either way. So find examples, 1 minimum, 3 max, of layouts that you like on websites, or you can just look at references through like Cosmos or Dribble, Behance, whatever, and then you can use those to create your first homepage. And then what you'll do is you'll start to update things over time. So now that we got the 8-step process to get started building a project, I also put some tips in here that I thought were useful. So a strong Claude.md file means you barely write copy by hand, meaning that you don't have to write copy section by section if your Claude.md file is on point, aka it knows everything about what you do, it knows your messaging, it knows your positioning, it knows your ICP, it knows everything. And if you include all that and it's very dialed in, you don't have to write any copy by hand. I barely wrote any copy by hand for Sprintly's website. At first I was struggling with it, but when I figured it out, it got like really good. The second thing is check for new skills weekly. So this is a new industry, technically, a new product, a new line of work. So there's always going to be things evolving. So you want to make sure that you're checking consistently through platforms like I use Excel to stay up to date, but seeing what new skills are available for Claude Code, because skills can be very useful and very impactful. 3 is build modular, avoid one-off components. So you really want to make your website basically a giant modular puzzle, essentially. Like, you don't really want tons of hard-coded sections. You really want to use a lot of the same things and just kind of modify them. This is standard practice for web design in general, but for with Claude Code, it's invaluable. It's very useful. So the 4th thing is keep Claude Code or Claude.md updated as the project evolves. So as you get further and further in your project, things are going to change, evolve, ideas are going to shift, you're going to add new technologies, your stack might update. You want to make sure that you consistently update your Claude.md file whenever there's something worth adding. And an example of that is this 5th tip here is SEO. Don't leave SEO behind. Don't forget about SEO until after you finish the development. SEO should literally be top of mind for every single page that you make at the time you're making it. So this is an example for number 4 tip, Claude.md file updated. You want to make sure that, again, this is an example, but for SEO, put into your Claude.md file that you want a title, a description, an OG image, and a schema markup, and that you want to give it the parameters, the definitions of these things, and the rules for these things, because there's good schemas and there's good titles and description, there's bad ones. So you want to make sure that you give it the right context and the right rule sets to create this stuff at the first try. That way you're not, you're not going around chasing each page after you finish. It's annoying. So it's number 6 is kind of obvious, but it's just never try to prompt an entire site at once. The most that you can prompt at once is 1 page at a time, unless your pages are really simple. So I found that to be the sweet spot. If I'm doing something, then I'll code one page at a time, and section by section after that when I'm making revisions. Number 7 is use Claude to write complex Claude prompts. So I use Claude to help me write prompts for Claude Code a lot, and this is a lot of tokens. But the thing is Claude knows Claude Code better than anybody. So sometimes you'll write something into Claude Code, it's like kind of not straight, but Claude for some reason will understand it. So if you write to Claude like, hey, this is what I want, you can like send it even more stuff. You can send it videos and things like that, so you can actually show it more. It will be able to write you a perfect prompt. You just want to make sure that it doesn't try to overwrite what Claude Code knows. Like for example, like if it tries to overwrite your styling or whatever, you want to make sure that it has rules to follow if you're using that tactic. And the 8th and final tip is screenshots revise faster than words. So this was huge. I used the Windows capture tool down here. I'll show you what I mean. So whenever I was working on something, for example, if I was, if I go to the website here and I wanted to change the color of this text, I would use the snipping tool. I'd copy it. I'd open up VS Code and Claude Code. I'd paste it in, and I would tell it was wrong. Sometimes if there was a lot going on, I would even annotate using the rectangles. I'd be like this. Change this line of text. I'd copy it, paste it in. So this is just a lot quicker than trying to describe everything with words. It understands annotations. It understands basic pictures, especially when it's already seeing stuff. So that was very useful for me. And so that's all the tips. That's the process. And the 4th thing I want to share with you guys is something that I wish I had. So essentially, if you plan on building a website using Claude Code, you want to start in Claude. If you're new to this, even if you're not new to this, it's still useful. But you want to start in Claude. That way you create a project in Claude with all the context in one place, and you can reference that and speak with Claude about certain things, and you can go back and forth. So what I recommend you do is you use this prompt that I made right here. This prompt is based off of everything in this guide. You just copy and paste the whole thing and you fill out the stuff right here. And then it's going to tell Claude what to do and like how to help. And it's going to create like a rule set and a process for you. And then you can literally go back and like reference things and ask Claude, like, what did I do for this? Or blah, blah, blah. Or how do I do this? And it's going to give you step-by-step instruction, which is super nice to have because you don't want to have to like try to figure everything else out on your own. It's kind of a pain in the ass. So finally leaving off with some notes here. It's commit small and often, aka you want to make, once your site is like, ready to like go on Vercel, you're happy with the homepage and you're ready to start building new pages, for example, you want to commit often, which means when you commit, you're pushing your code base from your computer to GitHub, and then Vercel will automatically pick that up and then push that to live. So you want to do that in small amounts. You don't want to wait until like your entire website's finished. You kind of want to make some updates, commit, test on live, and then make iterations if needed. The other thing is ship rough first, refine the second pass, so move faster. This is for people that are trying to move fast. If you're working against the time frame, it's an evolving process that happens, and it's really hard to get things right the first time if you're making something complex. And if that's the case, don't be afraid to just put it as is, because sometimes that's just what we need. Install analytics before lunch, not after. I just thought, it's better to have that ready to go just for the sake of like collecting data in either way, shape, or form, and also setting up your cookies and your policy page. Use plan mode for anything risky. So plan mode is essentially you have different modes in Claude Code. And you see down here, if you click it, you have plan mode, ask for edits. So plan mode is basically you give it like a pretty large to medium task, and before it executes anything, it's going to create a plan, and then you verify that plan, and then you can like say, okay, go ahead. You also have an effort switch down here, which is pretty nice. So that's going to affect token usage as well. So that's everything. I don't want to make this video any longer than it needs to be. That's how I built Sprintly's website. That's how I recommend anyone else build their website. I did watch a few YouTube videos on how people are building websites with Claude Code, and to be honest, I think a lot of them were very similar to one another. It's like they never actually built a website, or if they did, they didn't know how to build it. So this is how I would build a website as a web designer and a web developer that's been working in this field for 8 years now. Again, this is going to be evolving pretty quickly, so I don't know how long this is going to be before it's outdated, but it's still a great way to start. And if you have any questions, make sure you refer to this. And if you haven't already, make sure you use this prompt if you plan to do something with Claude Code and building a website. And that's pretty much it. So I hope this helped. I hope it was useful. And maybe I'll make a video of me making my personal portfolio of Claude Code using the same exact thing. See ya.